Okay, so welcome to Jolty. Today we're going to bring you a conversation with Dr. Alex Box, who is a fascinating multidisciplinary force. She started as a makeup artist, but a very unique one, and she's an artist. She converges fashion and technology. She's thinking about the digital future, and she has a lot to say about a lot of things and can help, I think, reframe how we look at the world.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to her. And she could tell us all about makeup too.
Yes, and all about what the future of longevity will be and what it'll be like when our bodies are detached from our consciousness and other
Yeah.
things that are not the part of everyday conversation, but the part of her everyday conversation. So let's bring her on.
Okay. Hello, Alex.
Hi.
Nice to
Hi,
meet you.
Alex.
Great to meet you.
This is my bestie, Adam Hanft, and we're both futurists, and we've been doing Jolty for a while, and we've been watching you. And let's say we're very interested and fascinated, and we would ask you, just for our listeners, to describe what you do. Dr. Alex Box, and the doctor is a PhD.
It's an honorary doctorship from Solent University, a Doctor of Design.
We'll take
Okay.
it.
Well, tell us what you do.
Well, it's been a long journey. It's always been in expansive body narratives, from fine artist to futurist. And it's always been about creating expansive narratives with the body. And where I'm now at with identity design, I've been kind of creating the principles of form and function and personhood and developing the physical and digital and using the body as a communication tool and creating expansive narratives and now reaching into the metaverse, creating and bringing brands to understand and recontextualize beauty and really basically step into a space now where immersive the product can be experienced. So we're kind of bringing together the body into a future narrative, but we're also kind of reaching beyond the body and into post-human form as well, and person. What is personhood in digital spaces? And so it's kind of brought where I was beginning to develop body narrative as a fine artist. It feels like it's come very much full circle for me now.
So if somebody said to you, ran into you in the street and say, what do you make that I can see? What do you make that I can see?
Well, at the moment I'm creating a lot of phygital humans. So they're for me they're kind of like I said like post humans. Their work exploring the body in a physical and a digital space. But I'm also consulting and bringing the idea of experience into product and into brands exploration into those spaces. So at the moment you would see a mixture of my fine artwork and my exploration of self and the textured self, as I call it, which is pushing at all the kind of new technologies that I've got my hands on that I can kind of express surface and texture through, but through digital humans, because I've kind of moved through using the body in the physical and mixing that with digital humans. And now I'm working purely on digital humans. So I'm exploring my artwork and what I can convey through the digital humans, but I'm also working with brands and working with new ways to explore, I would say, narratives and DNA of different brands and how they can actually take tentative steps into a new space. We're talking to a new way of connecting with their citizens. I don't want to use the word consumer.
Right.
Me neither. I hate that. Yeah.
Before, we'd love to kind of follow down that trail, but let's pause for a second, sort of go back to some of the more fundamental questions you raised, which include, what makes us human? And is that which makes us human actually amplified by the metaverse and technology and the fusion of those things? or do we become less human, or is it some combination of both? What do you think?
Well, I think it's really interesting for me at the moment because I'm working on a lot of explorative, very sophisticated, sensitive, what I'm calling emotional digital tools, which
Hmm.
are because I think we're in this really quite vulgar nascent stage of digital language, which is very um, driven by the programs.
Hmm.
You'll have the mercurial button, the mirror button,
Right.
the make things shimmer button, and because of that, you get these spikes of trend, and it's very easy to make something look very perfect and move, and everybody's
Right.
excited by moving and being shiny. But that's where we're at. We're in this we're in the early stages of developing taste in digital language, and I think that because of that, you've got the real, you've got the hand, you've got the touch, you've got all the nuance and sophistication of everything that the hand can do, and
Right.
we have that level of sophistication in taste and smell and everything, and we expect to see that in digital, and a lot of the time we don't, and that kind of fall and that kind of petty mode of that gap is what makes people think it's vulgar and refuse to kind of engage and make it feel not human. And I think that, but what I'm really interested in is that whilst all the people that are working in at the cutting edge of digital and in film, they're trying to get as real as possible. They're trying to get the sweat, the dirt, the imbalance,
Right.
you know the the things that make us real, and they're getting very close to it. Whereas in the real world, people are, if you look at the way we are progressing through augmented beauty and surgery, they're chasing the cyber 80s version of 60s, almost Paco Rabanne version of the future sex robot. And so there's this kind of Venn diagram where digital is going to become more real and humans are going to become more like nostalgic 70s digital. So there'll be a point where I feel the digital will be closer to the real and reteach humans how to be more real again than they are because they're chasing the digital.
So it's sort of an arms race then, in a way, right, between what we want in terms of our own physical perfection and and the manipulative or perfection that technology can bring. Will we ever come together?
Yeah, I really think so because I hope so. I'm trying to make that happen.
Right.
That there's a sensitive practice, I think, that is always missing at the moment. Like I say, we're in a very early stages, so we can see this happening in front of us. And what's happened because of the minute the camera was put in the phone and we could see ourselves, this became the marketplace all of a sudden. Because of that, the filter and everything that like I say, is pretty crude. Uh, Interaction with digital became something that we were so used to seeing that, and obviously the race of the pandemic and us in this kind of situation, seeing ourselves all the time. People are so used to seeing that version of themselves, that they want to chase that in the real, and the kind of shortfall again from not looking as good as the way you look in your digital, version of yourself, has kind of warped people's idea of what they really are. But with that, like I said, the more, again, we are communicating through very early technology or very unsophisticated technology. So as that advances and accelerates and the tech becomes less visible, and obviously the more we move into when screens have gone and we're just in virtual,
Right.
it's going to be much more sensorial. So I think that the closer we get to the senses, the closer we get to that arms race that you said, it will come together, it will cohese more, I think. I mean, but I also think that we'll be much more used to expressing ourselves in very different ways and more fragmented and not necessarily in a bad way, but in a kind of prismatic way. I'm always chasing the poetry, you see.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, everything today is the metaverse and the metaverse and the metaverse,
Which isn't even here yet, but yeah.
All right. Well, you want to tell me what it's going to be like, what your version of beauty in the metaverse is going to be?
Well, I think a metaverse is a great word because again, it's like unobtainium. It's not the Ready Player Me version of the idea of the metaverse isn't even there's versions of, but there isn't a metaverse. There'll be multiverses and omniverses, but I sort of feel like that my version that I think will be a version is many fractal planets, many sort of many worlds with their own rules. But I think the idea of cross platform, sort of, like I say, Ready Player Me version, I think is quite far off, just because it's so difficult to navigate, and how people own platforms, and the aesthetics of platforms. So I'm quite excited about post human identity, post body identity. So being entities more than bodies, which that maybe sounds strange from someone that's worked with faces and bodies for all their lives. But I'm sort of excited to be exploring what we are, if we are sound or nebulous form, or free from pretty much the entire trappings of everything that has gone before, that has kept people very boundaried by their identity, and boundaried by their expectation of their form. And I think that once we remove the form, we'll be in a better place.
But are there risks to removing the form? Is there a thesis or an argument that says that the form actually encodes morality and ethics in some way?
Mm. Well, we haven't got very far. We haven't got very far on our ethics and morals.
No, we haven't. That's true. But it goes back.
Yeah,
don't hit your sister. Maybe is where don't choke the dog. Don't pull the tail of the dog is maybe where morality starts, and we understand the separation of ourselves and others, and what we can violate and what we can't. So,
well, that's what. Yeah, I mean, that's why I find it really interesting that when you move the body, there's a lot of that body logic and morals are based in form, and that's why I think that when you remove the form, I mean, at the moment I'm working on the idea of geodes, and people being geodes, and them being connected by almost like a bit like Stonehenge, in the sort of sense that you would come into a space that each geode was separate, but once they align, they have an order that starts to develop, and a language that starts to develop between them through presence. And I think that, I guess, yes, I know what you're saying, but I think a lot of where we are with our morals and our sort of, I would say, ethics, have come from the body. And I mean, it's a big step to say let's remove it and start again. But I think that's the sort of hypothesis I'm looking at, because I don't think we've done very well so far.
I would agree.
So, is that like a joint consciousness you're really going toward with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it's a hypothesis at the moment. I'm talking to different developers about to try and do a white paper for it, really, to see if it could actually be made. But it came out of the idea of just a chat like this, really, about social media, and how could you have a social space that wasn't driven by all of the codes that we have in our body, in our beliefs and our desires, and our our expectations of each other. And I'd gone to a stone circle, because I live somewhere. I live out in the middle of the countryside, and there was it was a very sort of, it was an ancient stone circle, but it had 20 stones, and I noticed how people reacted to the stones in those spaces. They went towards that. All the stones were different shapes. They went towards them. They gravitated to different ones. They did. We had a picnic in the middle of it, but there was a sort of there was like a town hall social space structure to it, even though it was just this basic circle. It had a presence. People identified, but they reacted, and I was very curious about the way just the basic thing of being attracted to a certain shape that they felt they identified with in the most basic shape of all. It was like a hewn stone. So I just thought, well, could we take that sort of attraction or identification or parallel of almost seeing yourself as one of these geos, and actually be able to build up language, and the same way that the sound circles did, because those stone circles, that they were built because if you played music inside them, they resonated and the nearby village could hear it and all those kind of things. So I was sort of looking at how, if as community we could start to build a different language, and if that would be based not on our body logic but on a new logic.
So if you think about Stonehenge,
And like you said, a collective
right?
consciousness. Stonehenge, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so a sort of a collective consciousness for sure, because that is what, you know. I mean, that's why I found Clubhouse exciting when it first started. You know, the removal of the body was very exciting to me, because we were connecting through voice, and that was very new.
I just want to ask one
like
question, Addie. I know you have something
Sure,
to
no,
ask, but
go.
we've been looking a lot at the metaverse and various things, and we're also thinking and talking about stored consciousness, the end of death as we know it, because death is about the body. You don't have a body, you don't have to die. If you can figure out a way to upload, like you're saying, and connect consciousness and actually keep communicating and keep creating without the body. Then people say, well, isn't the soul in the body? I think very little good is in the body. I mean, like, really, what's been good about it? I mean maybe childbirth, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but what else? I mean, I don't know. So what about that? I mean, what about living forever on a computer of some sort?
Well, I think that's, I think that's happening right now. You know, every single bit of data from TikTok is informing an algorithm that will go on to live autonomously forever and ever. If I'm allowed to say that, I think that's what's happening.
Well, yes, take that thought further. So every bit of data on TikTok is like preserved forever, and what?
Well, to be studied, you know. I mean, I think there's a reason that everything is filmed and micro scrutinized for reaction and physical reaction, and why, and the micro reading of how to teach computers to be more human. It's a live stream of data, you know, of all manner of humanities doing things constantly in short sound bites that can teach computers. You know, I mean, it's free. It's not free. We're the product, but
it seems to me, to both of your points, that we're sort of in this inflection point moment, which is, on one hand, everything about wellness and self-care and a Zen approach to life says live in the moment, and fully be absorbed by that. And then you've got this other side of the argument or thesis, which says we all want to live forever and to upload our consciousness. And why bother to live in the moment when there's going to be an inevitable infinite number of moments? It seems like that's in some ways the philosophical divide of our time.
But there's always been oscillating theories of all those things, always, hasn't there? I mean, the simulation theory, that, you know, all. I think we're just getting a physicality of it now. You know, a lot of those theories are very old, and now we're sort of seeing the possibilities of them actually being created in software. You know, and testing it. I mean, no one's ever tested it. Nobody's come back from death and said, well, this is what it was like. But now, you know, I do think we're in this kind of, I think, the sort of dying embers of the body as we know it, before it becomes definitely much more enhanced, whether it's life expectancy enhancement or physical wearables, attachments. You know, obviously we're declining as a population, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But I do think, because of life expectancy increasing, you know, with the enhancements, I think that it's almost like the long tail, isn't it? The minute with the internet, that the long drawn out flat
Yes.
line it is kind of where we're heading. And I think that, I mean, I'm quite interested in a lot of, I started to join a lot of Buddhist groups a couple of years ago. Not a lot of Buddhist groups. I started to join a Buddhist group a couple of years ago in lockdown, and got in much more into meditation. But what I found very interesting is how they view death, and how, the idea of the spiritual death, and that there's many deaths in life. And I think that that's quite interesting, because a lot of the time it is about removing the ego and removing the expectation and the fear of death and the physicality of that. And that, like you said, Faith, the body is, it's a little bit like when the charge is out of a mobile phone, you're just left with this hunk of black plastic with no charge, and you realize that the charge is the life, and that the body is the meat sack, as it were, and that what is the consciousness, what is the charge, what is that energy, and is that just not something that just obviously goes back into the ether, but it could now be downloaded and live forever, and ergo it does anyway, but then it has a hardware version. And I think that, I mean, that's like memory. I mean, after I turn this phone off, I'll be thinking about you this evening, and that'll go into my dreams, and that I'll think about it tomorrow, and therefore you live, And I think that now we have actual physicalities to this. We have aesthetics or hardware for that. And I think that that's, for the first time, that's attainable, and that kind of is time travel, isn't it? I think, and that is testing all these theories and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
So time travel will be like, you just think it. Do you think time travel, you'll, like they see in, cheap 50s science fiction, like you'll disintegrate and then what do you call it? Reintegrate.
Compose. Right.
Yeah, on the other side? Or is it just going to be your imagination with maybe a hologram, or what's it going to be?
I think, I mean, in a way, I hope for people to be less fearful of death, to be able to, or be able to experience dissolving of an ego while they're alive, because they have a chance to experience connective consciousness, to know that there's they are everything and everything is them on a kind of molecular level. That if you could create those experiences, you would hope that greed and power and ego would dissolve. You would hope these things, and therefore there wouldn't be a fear for death. Therefore there wouldn't be so much, in a way, so much drive towards consumption and all the things that have got us in the mess that we're in. Therefore, that death is kind of not really something that you're hurtling towards. It's kind of, in a way, you are. I think. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I've been through many points in my life that some other people might not have, because I've had life. I had heart surgery and things like that. So there's been moments where, and I think moments like that you have. Not that I was by any way, I mean, not spiritual before that, but there's a lot of things that fall away when you don't know what's going to happen to yourself, And I think that I've always felt very much inside and outside of consciousness throughout my life anyway. And I think that when we think about what's it going to be, or what are we going to create, or what's this, I think we desire communication and just things to be just so much better than it is, And I think that if any way, as a creative, you can create more communication between people. I mean, that's for me what all my art's ever been about. And most people, when I get to the crux of what they're making art for, is to communicate, and essentially to make people feel and actually emote experience and have empathy, and then ethics will grow from the empathy.
So how do you have a war if you don't have a body?
How do you have a war, did you say?
Yeah, if you don't have a body, are you? What are you competing for? Intelligence? Is that become the land of the future, or
No, I mean, you compete for resources in a different way.
okay? Like what though? Though.
Maybe you don't compete.
Well, it depends, how you define compete. And also, evolutionary psychology tells us that, we've been hardwired for millennia. Our brains are primitive. They're structured in a certain way. We're limited by our, our, the limits of our cortex, of our amygdala. Our brain structures are there. It's kind of hard. We may temporarily transcend them. And I think for me, part of it is, the fear of death is sort of hardwired in us. I was struck by listening to all the news reports on the Queen, and everybody said, without thinking about the fact that it's not necessarily believed by everybody, that the King and Queen are now reunited. Prince Philip, I'm sorry, the Queen is reunited with Prince Philip. They're burying him or next to him. They're reunited. They're reunited. Like, that's this very religious point of view, and a lot of people don't believe that. Think that's bullshit. Frankly, that they're not reunited. That's it. But the comfort, and all the newscasters felt very comfortable defaulting to that very primitive notion of reunited. Every commemorative eulogy says now they're reunited, they're back together again. Like, really? But again, it's because we are wired to believe that. Every religion has some afterlife. Every religion has some afterlife component.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's
It is. It's a great marketing idea.
I was going to say that. Yeah. I mean, you
Right.
can't argue with something that you can't come back from and tell the tale. It's. I think that, but that's natural. I mean, in the sort of sense that, I mean, I've been very intrigued to know how I'll feel in 10, 15, 20 years time. I sort of,
Mhm.
I already feel it now, and I've talked to the Buddhists about this, because they do the stages of decay of the body. They go beyond just the death. It's, this is what you look like when you rot. This is what you look like when and I think there's the sort of visceralness of it, and the fear of it. It's more a fear of the void. And I think that, that fear of the void is something that it's the idea of eternity, and like you
Yeah.
said, that even after death there has to be this reunited and another place to go to, and inhabit with the same sort of presence that you're given now, as your understanding of that. And I know there's an immense comfort in that, and I think that's really important for a lot of people to function.
I agree.
And I think that it's very comforting, and it's been
And I
very
mean,
successful.
if Prince Philip was uploaded, and now the Queen's losing her body and gets uploaded, and then they can commune, they would be together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that all these things are possible. I think that, I mean, I'm sort of really, I think that it's really interesting for us to be in a process or in a situation now where we can see these things become a possibility.
Yeah.
Before we are talking about, we're talking about psychology, and the minute you talk about them, the minute you talk about people's, theoretical studies or hypotheses, you are on your own journey with those, and the way you internalize them or kind of, make them physical in your mind is very unique to you, even though you may be reading the same book. It doesn't, it's something to, I mean, it's also something to converse with, the knowledge of another and the understanding of that knowledge, and how you've, how it's kind of made you feel is an empowerment. And there is also an ego in that, about imparting knowledge or something that you've read. And I think that it's all been about moving those theories around. But now some of those things can be actualized, or we're talking about time travel in a different way. We're talking about afterlife in a different way. It's really, for me, the ethics is huge, as you touched on before, because we are talking about people putting an aesthetical and ethical housing around these things, and we are talking about people with people's limited personhood making these things. So that's going to be really key to the sensitivity of what you're going to get, and I think it should be in the hands of people that are asking these questions the way we are, to develop that very slowly and carefully, because once those things are out there, they're out there,
Right. So, Alex, do you believe, there's a whole romantic tradition which says that something that disappears is more beautiful and more appreciated than something that isn't. That's goes back a long time. So do you think that if we, to your point, Faith, about Philip and the Queen endlessly talking about polishing the china for the silver, do you think that we lose the intensity of beauty? It's your world, Alex. I think we lose the intensity of beauty if it is infinite.
Wait a minute. I don't understand. Tell me another
So,
way.
go to Keats and look at all the, Shelley, Wordsworth, Shakespeare. Before that, obviously, there's a lot of literature and poetry that says the reason you appreciate a flower is because it's finite, it's going to disappear.
I see.
And the intensity of appreciation is therefore elevated because you're aware of its mortality. And in the absence of that, do we just not appreciate things as much? And also, does it just, if we have a finite amount of time to live and we have a moral structure within that finite amount of time and we don't have another 500 years to make up for our ethical lapses, does that just encourage like a shitload of bad behavior?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that kind of inbuilt obsolescence I think will be encoded into code as well. I think that it's just time will be different. I think to answer your thing about beauty as well, and I think that what's interesting about that is more the time frame that it's in, and the tragedy of the decay, and the beauty of the decay, and the Keatsness, and the things on the verge of death being its most beautiful, and the wabi sabi of that is apparent. But also you have the well-worn stone that's ancient, that has had many footprints over it, and it will be there for.
Can you just explain wabi sabi for our listeners?
It's beauty from things that are imperfect. So really the beauty in the crack, in the bloom, in the decay, in the imbalance, the perfect balance that's in imbalance, and the crack that runs through the pot being more imbibed with deep.
It's today we don't want perfect tomatoes that look like they came from a factory. We want heirloom tomatoes that are gnarly and bumpy and imperfect. That's wabi sabi.
I was going to say, it's quite funny about the heritage tomatoes. You've gone from the 70s, where my dad was growing tomatoes because everybody didn't have much money and it was necessity, to fast forward to now, where if you have an allotment, it means that you can afford to take time out of your job to grow a wonky tomato, and that you want it in the farmer's market because it's much more akin to time, and time is the luxury of now, and it shows that you can afford a wonky tomato.
It gets back to beauty, which is paleness was a sign of affluence because you weren't out in the sun working in the fields.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's time again, and it's that's what's quite interesting. I think we will see a shift definitely in like you said about the decaying flower, and the it's about kind of stretching the moment, I think. And I think that because I don't feel like it's going to happen overnight. It can't do, because people are very they really hold on to what they've achieved in their bodies, or what they've been told they've achieved through wellness or mind or status, or the body as commodity, through however much people have paid for whatever surgeries or aesthetical halting of times they've had or what have you. But I do think as time gets longer, those things won't mean as much, because they don't have the same currency anymore. Because if you're living till you're 500 years old, then what time are you trying to encapsulate? It's not going to be the first 10, 20, 30 years. I don't think that will be irrelevant. And I also think the way will people want to live that long? But I think environmentally, the way we look is going to change because of how much we have to protect our skin, how much we have to protect our entire bodies. So I think the face, in a way, I'm quite interested about how much protective clothing we're going to have to wear, how much we're going to have to protect ourselves, so how much will be visible and how much will be shown. It'll be a different aesthetic as well. I think there'll be so many shifts.
And then you have the impact of climate change, which is a whole other vector.
That's what I mean, exactly. Environment. Yeah. I mean, the bodies being exposed even be a thing of the past, unless it's just all. I mean, there has to be. I feel that we're in this really kind of an absolute apex of pornification, body dysmorphia. Everything is. I do feel that it's almost like a ball that's balanced. It has to drop, and I already feel like we're sort of. I feel that we're coming out of the curve of the. You can't be any more extreme, is what I'm trying to say, and I think there's sort of like the going towards the sophistication of, and I think actually the poetry and the delicateness that a lot of the narratives that digital will want to chase, because again, in its world, in the digital world, to make something look really real is the commodity. That's the sort of unobtainium of the digital developer. We all chase our own sort of best in class.
I have to say, it's the second time you use the word unobtainium, which we had, Faith and I have in our book, Dictionary of the Future. So
do you?
Explain it, though, to everybody, Addie.
No, let Alex explain it. She'll be better than I am.
You explain it.
No, I mean, it's a word. It's a word that I use because when I watched the film Avatar, and it kind of made me laugh that their sort of most desirable commodity, or the most desirable sort of material, was unobtainium, and I just thought.
Right. That's what it comes from.
Yeah, and I found that that's a word that I use because I feel that it's without, if you know what it is, you know what it is, but it's almost like the Nebuchadnezzar. It's something that's become a metaphor for something that is a thing, object, currency, or desire that is beyond any reach and put beyond any kind of unobtainable. So I think that we're always creating unobtainium in the same way we're always trying to cheat death. We're always trying to find a way out or find a way up. And
so you were a makeup artist, right?
Oh, in a guise, yes. In a
guise of, I mean, yeah, you're an artist, but a lot of your art was applied to faces, let's say.
Yes, yeah. I
right?
use as a medium.
But I noticed that you don't wear any makeup, or very little.
I do. I absolutely do, Jolty. I wasn't expecting to be on screen. I'm normally wearing, I would say, almost exactly identically the same makeup you're wearing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've literally just put my son to bed, and I thought they won't need to see me, so I'll be.
I thought you were making a statement. I thought you were going to tell me that your makeup is on the inside.
No, I'm very much an advocate of. In fact, I don't think anybody's seen me without red lipstick, so this will be interesting. But also refreshing to be talking.
That'll be our social media hook. Get to see Alex Box without lipstick. Don't miss this
Yeah,
episode.
don't miss this episode. It's just clear skin. It's very good for my the woman that does my skin, so she'll be happy.
No, you
But
look great.
oh, thank you. You both do. I where are you? Are you
I'm in New York, and Adam's in New York.
I'm in New York. We're both in New York. And where are you? The
I'm in the
country somewhere.
Cotswolds. I'm
Or
in
the
the Cotswolds.
Oh,
Oh,
Mm.
oh. Do you know?
surrounded by beautiful roofs.
Wow. Do you love it? Do you live there forever and ever?
Oh no. We moved here 4 years ago from central London, from Peckham, where I'd lived for 26 years. So it's about as different as it can be.
Can I ask you? Is it okay to ask you who we are? Who's the we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Professor Philip Delamore is my partner, and a brilliant mind who you would be more than a wonderful guest. I tell you, he's a very low key but very influential man in digital. So he was one of the early digital fashion pioneers, and
Oh,
he started um, the first ever digital fashion studio at London College of Fashion. Now he runs as a senior lecturer at the Royal College of Art and their humanware digital. They call it humanware. It's kind of pushing. They're really pushing there. It's fantastic. Very much, and we cross over constantly. And I mean, this is why
I'm sure
we work together all the time. You know.
that's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. So I asked Adam who he would like to merge with, and he said he'd like to merge with himself. Because we all have so many different aspects, right? So many different. But who would you like to merge with in your shared consciousness?
With nature,
Oh,
with I had a touch of this once where I had a very intense hypnotherapy session that gave me the tools to hypnotize myself, but I didn't do it very well. And I kind of went into this semi state of sort of meditation hypnotherapy, but I began I my I went into this kind of spatial liquid where I felt that I could feel what the bed, I could feel what the sheets felt like to be inside the weave, and I could feel the weave and the size and the density and the mass at the same time. And it was this kind of, it was almost like feeling time on a multiple axis. And I've been trying to describe it and create it for so long because it was so intensely complex about feeling time as a vertical and a horizontal, and feeling texture and feeling mass, of something that was me, but also was me integrated, almost like air going through every molecule. And I sort of felt
all without drugs.
all without drugs, absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, I've spoken to people about this before, and a lot of people have said, "Well, that's acid."
That's acid. Yeah, exactly.
That's acid. Yeah. Or, yeah. Yeah.
Which I've
Psilocybin
not
or.
had. Yeah, psilocybin or lion's mane, and I've not had that, but I do have. It's almost like this woman was talking to me about it, who does who gives people lion's mane and different kind of therapeutics, and she said, I think you have like a drip, like a leak in your consciousness, and this is in your everyday, and I do feel like that. I do have experiences like that a lot, but I think with that I felt this immense peace to be as important as a teacup, important as a bed sheet. We all had the same, we were all vying for the same, we were all on the same plane, and it was really, really, really peaceful. So I think that I thought, I was hoping that that's what death is, where you just return to this,
Yeah, be part of a tree.
The state of profound inseparability.
Yeah, it was
well put.
very beautiful, Adam. I hope I can hear and listen back to our conversation too,
You
because
certainly
it's really,
can.
really
Of
lovely.
course.
Thank you
And
for
we
asking me as well.
Well, thank
we're
you for
just
having me.
fascinated with you.
Yes.
Addie, I felt like we were tripping with her.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
does take you to a zone of heightened consciousness, doesn't she?
when she said she became a sheet, I mean, it's very easy to say, well, that's ridiculous. Or it's very easy to say, well, why are we better than our sheet? And why do we think we're so great? If we could be a sheet, I don't think we'd ever use Clorox. Or, you know, if we could be a tree, or if we could be,
Well,
integrated.
what is a sheet but basically a transition into sleep? So when you are a sheet, you really are part of your own dream.
Yeah. And
So
if you're cotton, you're made out of, natural
right, and
things.
if you're polyester, you're going to be in a landfill forever.
Yeah. So you live forever.
Okay.
I really liked her.
Yeah, I did too. I have to go back and listen again to fully absorb everything because there's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah. You'll have to explain some of it to me. I mean, she's out there.
Yeah, she's out there.
Yeah.
We'll
And I
translate
want to
for
get
each other.
Philip on. Let's get our partner on.
I agree. Let's get him on.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed it. So that was another episode of Jolty. Faith and I enjoyed it. We love shaking things up. We love hosting people who are transforming the world, who refuse to accept the status quo, and who are hopefully, and I think are, helping our listeners succeed in this jolty, jagged, and complicated world that we're in.
So please rate us or comment on iTunes or the platform of your choice. But be nice.
Tell your friends, and see you next time.
Yeah. See you in the future, peeps.
See you in the future.